Constantinople was not simply a city, it was an idea that had survived for over 1,000 years. Founded in the 4th century by Emperor Constantine the Great, it was designed to be eternal. A new Rome, protected by geography, faith, and stone. While other cities fell to time, war, and fire, Constantinople endured. It stood at the meeting point of Europe and Asia, controlling the passage between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean. Whoever held the city controlled trade, armies, and the flow of history itself. For centuries, its walls had stopped the greatest powers of the ancient and medieval world. Persian armies had broken against them. Arab caliphates had failed to breach them. Even the Crusaders, who once captured the city in 1204, did so through betrayal rather than strength. Time and again, Constantinople had proven that it was not meant to fall easily, but by the 15th century, the city was a shadow of its former self. What had once been a thriving imperial capital of nearly 500,000 people was now sparsely populated. Entire neighborhoods lay empty. Palaces crumbled. Marble statues were broken and reused as building material. Yet even in decline, the city carried a weight of memory that no other place on earth could match. To the Christian world, Constantinople was sacred. It was the heart of Eastern Christianity, the seat of Orthodox faith, the last living symbol of the Roman Empire. To the Muslim world, it was a prize foretold by prophecy, and in the year 1453, the balance that had protected the city for centuries finally collapsed. By the time of the final siege, Constantinople was no longer an empire. It was a city-state clinging to survival. The Byzantine Empire had been shrinking for generations. Each war, each civil conflict, each economic collapse had stripped away territory. By the mid-15th century, the emperor ruled little beyond the city walls themselves and a few scattered holdings in Greece. Inside Constantinople, life went on, but with a sense of quiet resignation. The market still opened. Craftsmen still worked. Priests still held services in vast churches that were far too large for the dwindling population. The famous Hagia Sophia still stood, its great dome dominating the skyline, reminding everyone of a more powerful past. But the city was tired. The population may have been as low as 50,000. Entire sections of the city had turned into farmland. The once crowded streets were silent in places where life had once thrived, and yet, the walls remained. The Theodosian walls were the strongest fortifications in Europe. 3 layers of defense, reinforced towers, and a wide moat had stopped countless invaders. For nearly 1,000 years, they had never been breached by direct assault. The city believed in its walls, but walls do not fight alone. Constantinople did not fall because it lacked courage, it fell because it lacked allies. Western Europe knew the city was in danger. The Ottoman Turks had been advancing steadily for decades, swallowing territory that had once belonged to Byzantium. Yet Europe was divided, distracted, and exhausted by its own conflicts. France and England were still recovering from the 100 Years' War. The Holy Roman Empire was fractured. The papacy was struggling to maintain authority. Old religious divisions between the Catholic West and the Orthodox East made cooperation difficult, if not impossible. The Byzantine emperors had tried everything. They negotiated. They pleaded. They even agreed, at least in name, to reunite the Eastern and Western churches, a deeply controversial move among the Orthodox population. Many citizens believed that accepting Catholic authority was a betrayal of their faith, but unity did not bring armies. A small number of foreign volunteers arrived. Brave men, but far too few. A handful of ships from Venice and Genoa. Several hundred professional soldiers, against an empire, it was nothing. Emperor Constantine XI knew this, yet he refused to abandon the city. Across the Bosphorus, a young ruler watched patiently. Sultan Mehmed II was only 21 years old, but he was no inexperienced prince. He had been educated in warfare, politics, religion, and science. He spoke multiple languages and studied the history of empires, and above all, he studied Constantinople. To Mehmed, the city was unfinished business. His predecessors had tried and failed to take it. He would not repeat their mistakes. Unlike earlier attackers, Mehmed understood that technology had changed the rules of war. Gunpowder was no longer a novelty. Cannons were becoming decisive. He commissioned massive artillery pieces, including one enormous cannon capable of firing stone balls weighing hundreds of kilograms. Weapons so powerful they could shatter walls that had stood for centuries. He also prepared the largest army Constantinople had ever faced, perhaps over 80,000 soldiers, supported by a powerful navy. This time, the city would face not just faith and steel, but science. For centuries, Constantinople had trusted its walls. They were not ordinary defenses. They were the most advanced fortifications of the medieval world, 3 layers deep, massive stone towers, a wide moat designed to slow and exhaust attackers. No army had ever broken through them by force. But in 1453, the defenders were about to face something they had never seen before: gunpowder artillery. Sultan Mehmed II understood that the age of stone walls was ending. He sought craftsmen who could build cannons unlike any used before. One of them was a Hungarian engineer named Urban, who offered his services first to the Byzantines. Unable to afford his work, the empire turned him away. Mehmed did not. Urban was given unlimited resources: metal, labor, time. What emerged shocked everyone who saw it. A massive bombard cannon, so large it required dozens of oxen to move. It fired stone balls weighing hundreds of kilograms. Each shot shook the ground. Each impact cracked stone that had resisted centuries of siege. When the Ottomans positioned their artillery outside Constantinople's walls, the defenders realized the truth. The walls could be damaged. The cannons fired day and night. Each blast echoed across the city. Stones fell. The defenders rushed to repair the damage. They filled gaps with rubble, wood, and earth. They worked tirelessly, knowing that if the walls failed even once, the city would fall. For the first time in its history, Constantinople's walls were no longer invincible. In early April of 1453, the Ottoman army fully encircled Constantinople. On land, tens of thousands of soldiers surrounded the walls. At sea, Ottoman ships attempted to cut off supplies. Inside the city, panic was held back by discipline and faith. Emperor Constantine XI personally inspected the defenses. He stood on the walls alongside soldiers, nobles, monks, and foreign mercenaries. There was no retreat, no second capital, no relief army coming. This would be the final stand. Every day followed the same pattern: cannon fire at dawn, repair work through the afternoon, skirmishes at night. Ottoman troops tested the defenses constantly, searching for weaknesses. Arrows flew. Gunfire echoed. The defenders responded with everything they had. Despite being heavily outnumbered, the Byzantines fought with remarkable determination. They knew the stakes. This was not just a city under attack, it was their entire world. At sea, a critical moment occurred. A small fleet of Christian ships managed to break through the Ottoman blockade and enter the city's harbor. The people of Constantinople celebrated wildly. Church bells rang. For a brief moment, hope returned, but Mehmed was furious. In response, he ordered one of the most daring maneuvers of the siege. Ottoman ships were dragged overland, across hills and wooden tracks, and launched into the Golden Horn, bypassing the massive chain that protected the harbor. When the defenders woke and saw enemy ships behind their walls, morale plummeted. There was no safe side of the city anymore. As the siege dragged on, conditions inside Constantinople worsened. Food grew scarce. Sleep became rare. Fear became constant. Citizens crowded into churches, praying for deliverance. Priests led processions through the streets, carrying icons and relics believed to protect the city. Some believed angels would appear. Others believed the city was cursed. Rumors spread quickly. Some said the Virgin Mary had abandoned Constantinople. Others claimed visions warned of total destruction. Emperor Constantine XI remained calm, but the strain was visible. He knew that the city could not endure forever. Every day, the cannons weakened the walls further. Every night, the defenders grew more exhausted, yet there was no talk of surrender. To surrender meant the end of everything Byzantium represented. the final days were filled with signs that many interpreted as omens. A strange fog covered the city. A lunar eclipse darkened the sky. A fire briefly appeared atop the dome of Hagia Sophia. To a deeply religious population, these were not coincidences. They were warnings. On May 28, 1453, Emperor Constantine XI addressed his commanders and soldiers. He reminded them of their duty, of their faith, of their history. He told them there would be no escape. That night, the city prepared for its final test. On the night of May 28, 1453, Constantinople knew the end was near. The cannons fell silent. For weeks, the city had lived under constant thunder. Now, the sudden quiet was worse. Silence meant preparation. Silence meant the final assault was coming. Inside the walls, Emperor Constantine XI ordered all defenders to their positions. There would be no rotations. No rest. Every man would stand where he was most needed. That evening, something extraordinary happened. Christians from different traditions, Orthodox, Catholic, Greek, Latin, gathered together inside Hagia Sophia. For centuries, these groups had argued, separated, and condemned one another. But on this night, none of that mattered. They prayed together. Candles lit the vast interior. Hymns echoed beneath the great dome. Men, women, and children wept openly. Some prayed for survival. Others prayed only for strength to face what was coming. Outside the city, the Ottoman army prepared. Mehmed II ordered his troops to rest, eat, and pray. He promised rewards to those who survived the coming assault. According to custom, the city would be given to the soldiers to plunder, a powerful motivation. Before dawn, Mehmed rode through his camp. He spoke of destiny, of history, of the moment that would define his reign. As midnight passed, torches were lit across the Ottoman lines. Constantinople waited. In the early hours of May 29, the final attack began. The Ottomans attacked in waves. First came irregular troops, sent forward to exhaust the defenders. They were met with arrows, stones, and fire. Many fell, but the defenders were forced to fight without pause. Then came better trained soldiers, and finally, the elite janissaries. By now, the walls were badly damaged. Repairs made during the night could not withstand the renewed cannon fire. One section near the gate of St. Romanus began to collapse. The defenders fought desperately to hold the breach. Emperor Constantine XI was there, fighting alongside his men. He wore no crown, no imperial robes, only armor. At some point during the chaos, a small gate, the Kirkaporta, may have been left open. Ottoman soldiers poured through. Once enemies were inside the city, the battle was lost. The defenders broke. Some fled. Some continued fighting in the streets. Bells rang wildly as panic spread. The Ottomans surged forward. Constantinople, which had stood for over 1,000 years, was falling. As the city collapsed around him, Emperor Constantine XI refused to flee. According to tradition, he removed his imperial insignia so his body would not be recognized. Then he charged into the fighting. He was never seen alive again. His body was later identified among the dead, not by his face, but by his boots. With him died the last Roman emperor. There would be no successor. The empire that traced its roots back to ancient Rome had ended, not with surrender, but with resistance. Meanwhile, Ottoman soldiers flooded the city. Churches were looted. Homes were broken into. People were captured, killed, or enslaved. Hagia Sophia was seized and converted into a mosque. By midday, Sultan Mehmed II entered Constantinople. He rode through streets filled with silence and smoke. Standing inside Hagia Sophia, he ordered the destruction to stop. The city was his now. The fall of Constantinople sent shockwaves across the world. In Europe, it was seen as a catastrophe. The final barrier between the Ottoman Empire and the heart of Europe was gone. Fear spread rapidly. Cities began strengthening walls. Kings prepared for wars they hoped would never come, but the consequences went far beyond fear. Greek scholars fled west, carrying ancient manuscripts that had been preserved in Constantinople for centuries. Their knowledge helped ignite the Renaissance. Trade routes to the east were cut off. European powers began searching for new paths, across oceans rather than land. Within decades, this search would lead to the Age of Exploration. The Middle Ages ended not with a slow decline, but with the fall of a single city, and the modern world began. Constantinople had refused to die for over 1,000 years, but no city is eternal. Its fall marked the end of the Roman world, the transformation of warfare, and the beginning of a new global age. It was the end of one era, and the beginning of another. This is History Speaks with AI. If you value deep, calm, cinematic history, like, subscribe, and comment the next story you want told. Because history does not disappear, it waits.